Welcome to Howling After Dark, Hollywood Undead. Tonight's show is, like the title suggests, it's all about haunts of Hollywood, both past and present. Starting with what is probably one of my most favorite of all time. I'm going to tell you this little story. She was born as Gladys Louise Smith on April 8th, 1892. She was raised in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. She died May 29th, 1979 at the age of 87 in Santa Monica, California. Her name was Mary Pickford. Mary Pickford was born Gladys Louise Smith at 211 University Avenue in Toronto. Her father was John Charles Smith. Smith was son of English Methodist immigrants and worked a variety of odd jobs. Her mother was Charlotte Hennessy, an Irish Catholic. She had two younger siblings, John Charles, called Jack, and Charlotte, called Lottie, who would also become actors. To please their relatives, Pickford's mother baptized her children as Methodists. Charlotte Hennessy Smith, having worked as a seamstress while separated from her husband, began taking in boarders. One of these was a theatrical stage manager. At his suggestion, Gladys, who at the time was age 7, was given two small roles, one as a boy and the other as a girl, in a stock company production of The Silver King at Toronto's Princess Theatre. She subsequently acted in many melodramas, Toronto's Valentine Company, finally playing the major child role in their version of The Silver King, and capping her short career with the starring role of Little Eva in their production of Uncle Tom's Cabin. By the early 1900s, theater had become a family enterprise. Pickford, her mother, and two younger siblings toured the United States by rail, performing in third-rate companies and plays. After 6 impoverished years, Pickford allowed one more summer to land a leading role on Broadway, planning to quit acting if she failed. In 1906, Mary, Lottie, and Jack supported singer Chauncey Olcott in Broadway in Edmund Burke. Mary finally landed a supporting role in a 1907 Broadway play, The Warrens of Virginia. On April 19th, 1909, Biograph Company director D.W. Griffith screen tested her at the company's New York studio for a role in the Nickelodeon film Peepa Passes. A Nickelodeon film was basically a silent film where they played a Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon is kind of a musical instrument, sort of. It's like what you'd see like in the old days with the guy sitting there cranking the little thing that plays music, and he's got the little pet monkey that goes around and collects money. That's a Nickelodeon. Not to be confused with, it's spelled the same way, and it's where they got the name, but it's not like Nickelodeon Studios. It's what that turned into. Anyways, the role went to someone else, but Griffith was immediately taken with Pickford. She quickly grasped that movie acting was simpler than the stylized stage acting of the day. Most biograph actors earn $5 a day, but after Pickford's single day in the studio, Griffith agreed to pay her $10 a day against a guarantee of $40 a week. Pickford, like all actors at Biograph, played both bit parts in leading roles, playing mothers, ingenues, charwomen, spitfires, slaves, Native Americans, spurned women, and even a prostitute. As Pickford herself said of her success at Biograph. She appeared in 51 films in 1909, almost one a week. She also introduced her friend, Florence Labadie, to D.W. Griffith, who launched Labadie's career. In January 1910, Pickford traveled with Biograph crew to Los Angeles. Many other companies wintered on the West Coast, escaping the weak light and short days that hampered winter shooting in the East. Let's see. I'm going to skip ahead here because I want to get to the good part. Pickford used her stature in the movie industry to promote a variety of causes. During World War I, she promoted the sale of Liberty bonds through an exhausting series of fundraising speeches that kicked off in Washington, D.C., where she sold bonds alongside Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, Theda Bara, and Marie Dressler, all famous Hollywood actors of the time. I mean, Charlie Chaplin, come on now. She spoke on Wall Street to an estimated 50,000 people. Though Canadian-born, she was a powerful symbol of Americana, kissing the American flag for cameras and auctioning one of her world-famous curls for $15,000 in a single speech in Chicago. At the end of World War I, Pickford conceived of the Motion Picture Relief Fund, an organization to help financially needy actors. Leftover funds from her work selling Liberty bonds were put toward its creation, and in 1921, the Motion Picture Relief Fund was officially incorporated. In 1919, she increased her power by co-founding. In 1919, she co-founded United Artists with Charlie Chaplin, D.W. Griffith, and her soon-to-be husband, Douglas Fairbanks. Do you realize, like, what a big statement that is? In 1919, women didn't have fucking rights in 1919. It was still legal to beat your wife with a stick no bigger than your thumb. Like, no bigger around than your thumb in 1919. Women didn't have fucking rights, and she co-founded United Artists. That's frickin' epic. She suffered many, what's the word I'm looking for, tragedies throughout her life. She lost a child. They don't know whether it was a miscarriage or an abortion. She never talked about it. Her first husband was an Irish-born actor by the name of Owen Moore, who was a very violent alcoholic. She suffered from a flu epidemic that happened in 1918 that many believe is the reason why she was not able to bear children later on. Douglas Fairbanks, her husband, by the way, if you're having trouble putting a face to the name. He played in the original TV series, the old black and white TV series, The Mark of Zorro. Yes, he played Zorro. He was a good-looking dude. She was really good friends with Charlie Chaplin, and she even had dinner parties at her mansion, which they called Pick Fair. And a number of notable guests came regularly, including Charlie Chaplin, who was her husband's best friend, by the way. And other guests included George Bernard Shaw, Albert Einstein, Eleanor Glenn, Helen Keller, H.G. Wells, Lord Mountbatten, Fritz Kessler, Amelia Earhart, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Noel Coward, Max Reinhardt, Baron Nishi, Vladimir Nemirovich Danchenko, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the inventor of Sherlock Holmes, used to have dinner at her house. That's the kind of woman we're talking about here. So when I say that like, later on when she had trouble, don't think less of her, don't, because she did amazing things. She retired from the screen and she became an alcoholic, as her father had before her. Her mother, Charlotte, died of breast cancer in March of 1928. Her siblings, Lottie and Jack, died of alcohol-related causes. She gradually became a recluse, remained almost entirely inside her mansion, Pickfair, and allowing visits only from Lillian Gish, her stepson, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., and a few select others. She appeared in court in 1959 in a matter pertaining to her co-ownership of North Carolina TV station WSJS. She was 67. In the mid-1960s, Pickford often received visitors only by telephone. I mean, she died a total recluse. On May 29th of 1979, she died at a Santa Monica hospital of complications from cerebral hemorrhage. Both Forest Lawn Memorial Cemetery in Glendale, California is haunted by her, as well as her home, which was formerly known as Pickfair, which is now the home of actor Will Smith. So, seriously though, like, this woman was amazing. Like so many things would not have happened if it weren't for her. I mean, yeah, she was famous. She was wealthy. She had it all, and yet she did nothing but really give. She was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in February of 1960. A bust and historical plaque marks her birthplace in Toronto, now the site of the Hospital for Sick Children. The plaque was unveiled by her husband, Buddy Rogers, in 1973. That was her third husband. It's her husband after Douglas Fairbanks. In 1993, a Golden Palm Star on the Palm Springs Walk of Stars was dedicated to her. That's in 1993. I mean, this woman touched so many lives. Do you realize the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto is what Children's Hospital is today? It literally is what Children's Hospital is today. It's where it came from. So Children's Hospital would not exist right now if it were not for Mary Pickford. That's epic. She's got a star on Canada's Walk of Fame in Toronto. I mean, she's amazing. unbelievable woman. Now we get to the nitty-gritty, as it were. Almost from the founding of the city, Los Angeles had a bad reputation. The once sleepy Spanish mission had been stolen from the rightful Mexican owners. I love how it says this. The rightful Mexican owners. Yeah, because they didn't steal it from the Native Americans that lived there before. But whatever. The rightful Mexican owners during the American quest for manifest destiny. And soon immigrants from the east were pouring out to the west coast. The eastern newspapers promised sunshine, warm weather, easy living, and of course an elusive fortune which could be attained in the California goldfields. What many of the immigrants found instead was poverty and death. The majority of them returned home with nothing to show for their travels and hard work, and many of them never returned at all. By the middle part of the 1800s, Los Angeles, dubbed the City of Angels by the original founders, was literally filled with murderers, thieves, and prostitutes. The streets were nothing more than rutted dirt paths where animals roamed and where garbage was dumped. The city gained its notoriety in 1871 when a massacre of Chinese immigrants was reported in newspapers all over the country. The massacre took place near the Old City Plaza on Calle de los Negros, which was commonly mistranslated in those days and called, and I'm quoting here, so don't get upset at me for saying it. If you're black or you're easily offended, you may want to stop listening now. Just saying. It was called Calle de los Negros, which was commonly mistranslated in those days and called Nigger Alley. Now, I'm not saying that's a good word. I'm not promoting its use, so don't get upset at me. I'm just reading the history. The narrow street was a block of saloons, gambling parlors, and dance halls. It was said that 3 or 4 men were murdered in the alley every weekend. In other words, not a good place to be if you wanted to live a long, happy life. It was in 1871 that a huge crowd of white men went on a killing spree in the alley after a drunken Chinese immigrant began firing off his gun and accidentally hit a white man. Within minutes, an inebriated and enraged mob swarmed through along the street, lynching, burning, stabbing, and beating any Chinese man that they could get their hands on. Eventually, 19 of them were killed. The grand jury indicted 156 men in the affair, with only 6 of them actually going to jail. Several days later, those 6 were released on lack of evidence, which was total bullshit, by the way. This would be the first time that charges of corruption would be leveled at local government, but it would not be the last. Shortly after the turn of the century, a new flock of immigrants arrived to be welcomed by what would only be rivaled in Chicago as the most corrupt city government and police force in America. Fortunes began to be made in oil and land, and graft and petty crime became commonplace. The population explosion brought not only the upright citizens, but the scam artists, con men, and nutcases who tried to take advantage of the rapid growth. Like most other cities in the country, corruption and vice came with the territory, but Los Angeles was different. It was new and fresh, and geography of the area, the automobile, and Hollywood all combined to create a unique combination. Other cities had grown up around horse-drawn carriages, railroad, and trolley cars, but Los Angeles was born at the beginning of the automobile age, and with over 450 square miles of roads, the city had plenty of room to grow. The car was the principal form of transportation, and this created boomtown mentality for new arrivals. Of all the reasons for the rapid growth, Hollywood undoubtedly the biggest one. The mere mention of the names guaranteed readers for any newspaper story in the nation. In just a few short years, thanks to huge stars like Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and many others, Hollywood had managed to set itself apart from the rest of the world, and everything here seemed larger than life. The rapid growth of Los Angeles was already causing enough problems when Prohibition came about in 1920 and created all new ones. As with just about everywhere else in the country, the demand for illegal liquor was high in LA, and there were dozens of hoods who were happy to bribe the cops to get the kegs and bottles in the right hands. Perhaps the most famous LA hotspot for booze was Culver City. Known as the heart of Screenland, this famous town played host to MGM, Hal Roach, and a number of other studios in its main street. Washington Boulevard played host to dozens of speakeasies, gambling parlors, and gin joints. The town's open reputation ensured gambling and prostitution as well, and soon it had added a racetrack, a boxing arena, and a dog racing track to its list of accomplishments. All of them served as a magnet for local gangsters. In addition, the Culver City Police Department was well known for looking the other way, losing evidence and bungling their investigations as long as the cash landed in the right pockets. Thanks to this, the life of crime here operated undisturbed. Of course, Culver City was not the only place to find booze, gambling, and broads. The rest of Southern California had a thirst for illegal liquor and vice as well. And Hollywood could always be counted on for corruption and scandal too. The film industry, which was the largest business in the area by the 1920s, provided more than enough money for both excess and debauchery. A series of scandals rocked the film colony in the early 20s, including the alleged rape and murder of actress Virginia Rapp by America's beloved funny man Fatty Arbuckle, the drug-related death of Wallace Reed, the murder of director William Desmond Taylor, and others. All this gave America a ringside seat to the scandals of the movie colony and its shining stars. There is no doubt about it. Orgies, drugs, legal hooch, scandals, and sex. Hollywood had it all. Bathtub gin and prostitutes were not only the forms of vice that hit Southern California by the late 1920s. Several sensational crimes had committed here as well. These would be the first of many to come. In 1927, the case of Edward Hickman and the kidnapping and dismemberment of 12-year-old Marion Parker would make big headlines, as would the 1929 gun battle between Jack Hawkins and Zeke Hayes and the LA police within the courthouse elevator. The two men had long records, which included alleged tortured death of a San Francisco cop. They were discovered in Southern California. They found themselves set up for LA sheriff-style revenge. The unsavory reputation of the region became a favorite topic for sermons across America. To those who came west into this den of iniquity, they found evangelists and preachers like Amy Semple McPherson and Fighting Bob Schuler waiting to save their souls, as long as the collection plates were always full. Los Angeles also began to earn its reputation as a landing spot for cults and the fringe element as well. According to novelist Nathaniel West, he used the dark side of LA for atmosphere in several of his books and stories. Some of the local churches included the Church Invisible, where fortunes were told, the Tabernacle of the Third Coming, where women in male clothing preached the crusade against salt, whatever, and the Temple Modern, where brain-breathing, the secret of the Aztecs, was taught. Wow. One of the most famous cult groups was founded in 1932 by a guy named Anna Ballard, who started the Church of I Am. The religion was based on the worship of the questionable deity Saint Germain, who supposedly gave off a violet ray of supernatural power. I think their weirdest religion, quite honestly, is Scientology, but, to each their own. It was said that they gained tens of thousands of worshippers, and they also sold products like New Age cold cream. Their son Donald claimed to have the ability to become invisible, and said that he possessed the psychic power derived from ascended spirits that was so powerful that he sunk several Nazi submarines. Whatever. The Ballards were eventually indicted for mail fraud, although charges were later overturned. By this time, however, the cult collapsed and they vanished into obscurity. Los Angeles continued to expand in the 1930s, becoming newcomers arrived on an almost daily basis. They were Okies. Okies, for those that don't know, were people from Oklahoma. They weren't just from Oklahoma, they were really from all over the Midwest, but they got it from Oklahomans who went west during the Depression because you couldn't survive in the Midwest during the Depression. Okies looking for work, scavengers looking for a quick buck, and of course dream seekers who came to Hollywood looking for their big break. Hollywood continued to serve as a beacon for would-be starlets and dreamers, but even the brightest aspects of Tinseltown were sometimes shadowed by death and scandal. In 1935 came the murder of celebrity Thelma Todd, which remains not only an unsolved case in Hollywood, but a part of its supernatural history as well. The murder combined a number of intriguing and classic elements, including gangsters, gambling, a fur-clad corpse found slumped over the wheel of a luxury car, and tales of the supernatural and spirits who do not rest in peace. The year 1938 was a turning point for Los Angeles crime. That same year, a private investigator named Harry Raymond was killed while looking into reports of police corruption. The ensuing investigation revealed proof of bribery and vice throughout the police department among city officials. LA's Mayor Frank Shaw was implicated, and he was eventually replaced by Fletcher Bowen. After that, raids increased on nightclubs and gambling spots, and as many mobsters lost their political connections, they headed out of town to Las Vegas. While the heat was undeniably turned up for a while, it did not bring an end to crime and corruption in the city. As World War II loomed closer, reports of fighting began to replace newspaper headlines about sensational crime. But the war began to expose other problems in LA, namely the situation with gangsters and black market. Soon readers were introduced to the king of LA underworld, Mickey Cohen. He was the most recognizable of the city's gangsters, and he was always dressed and acted the part, hanging out in all the right places and making enemies of all the right people. Connected to almost every type of vice in the city, he was constantly in the newspapers and was trailed by both the LAPD and Sheriff's Department, who busted him for small infractions which inevitably revealed larger crimes. Several attempts were made on Cohen's life by rival mobsters, but it would be the FBI who would get him in the end. They eventually put him in prison for 15 years on charges of tax evasion. Los Angeles and Hollywood changed after the war. By this time, the star system and the stranglehold the studios held on their stars' lives began to collapse. In LA, the end of the war saw the collapse of the black market and falling off of crime. However, the sex trade continued to operate uninhibited. In the late 1940s, Brenda Allen, one of the city's most notorious madams, faced a series of raids on her rented bordello. The case turned into a full-blown scandal when it was learned that a member of the Vice Squad was in Allen's pocket, and that a lot of money had changed hands to keep the House of Ill Repute open. In the end, Allen was jailed, the police chief resigned, and a number of vice cops were demoted. Several unsolved murders made headlines at the end of the 1940s as well as in June of 1947. Rifle bullet to the head ended the life of Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, Hollywood's most notorious gangster celebrity. He'd been killed while visiting girlfriend Virginia Hill's Beverly Hills home. There is much speculation as to who had whacked Siegel, but it was considered to be a mob hit. Apparently Bugsy had been skimming money from the construction of the Flamingo Hotel, the gambling mecca which would put Las Vegas on the map. Even more mysterious and much more gruesome was the January 1947 murder of Elizabeth Short. Her severed and bloodless body was discovered in a vacant lot in LA and would go on to become one of the most famous murders in the city's history. Dubbed the Black Dahlia by the local press, Short was the epitome of the girl who came to Hollywood to seek stardom. Vital months were traced back to the darker side of Hollywood, and her mysterious life and death has inspired a number of fictional accounts. Today the case still remains unsolved. I beg to differ. I think it has been solved, although I don't think it's been solved in a way that it would ever be proven in court. And I'll get back to that later. Also that same year came the murder of former aviatrix Jean French, whose battered nude body was found in a vacant lot in the Mar Vista section of LA. The case is colloquially coined the Red Lipstick Murder, when her torso was discovered to be inscribed with an obscene message that signed the words BD, Tex Andy. BD, Black Dahlia, it's the same killer. Police guess that the words may have been a mysterious reference to the Black Dahlia case, which had taken place about a month before. The search for the killer ended with no solutions and remained unsolved. See, I'm gonna delve into this real quick. I believe that Edward Wayne Edwards was in fact the lipstick killer, or as some in LA at the time called him, the werewolf, who was responsible for the death of Elizabeth Short and for this later killing of Jean French. And I think that this mysterious message and lipstick on the body, BD Tex Andy, was further proof of that, because his MO was to place blame on someone else, a likely suspect. That's what he did with the West Memphis 3. That's what he's done over and over and over again. So I think it was a early kind of weak attempt at placing blame elsewhere. By the 1950s, the noir reputation which LA has earned thanks to books and films was starting to come to an end, and by the late 1960s was gone altogether. Still, the darker element of society still rears its ugly head here on occasion, as witnessed by the brutal Manson family murders in the late 60s. There's no doubt that the culture of Hollywood virtually created the climate of Los Angeles in the early part of the century, and thus has created the region's large collection of ghostly tales and hauntings. The first of which was the death of Hollywood actress Olive Thomas. The shocking news was first heard on the radio on the night of September 10th, 1920, but would later make newspaper headlines. Olive Thomas dead from poison. Olive Thomas was a sprightly Ziegfeld Follies queen. If you don't know what Ziegfeld Follies is, they were the old, saloon girls that would, they were kind of like the predecessors of strippers, basically. The girls that would wear the funny dresses and kick up their legs and be wearing very little underneath. It was kind of their whole bit. She was also a silent film actress. She was found dead in Paris, which makes her death an unlikely one, granted, for the first Hollywood scandal, but there was no denying the connections. On the morning of September 10th, at Hotel Crillon, a valet used his passkey to enter the hotel's royal suite with a breakfast trolley. There on the floor was a sable opera cape, and on top of it was the body of a nude young woman. In one of her hands was a bottle of bichloride of mercury, which is a poison. The suite had been registered in the name of Mrs. Jack Pickford. That's right, Mrs. Jack Pickford. She was married to Jack Pickford, brother of Mary. So, that's how that ties in. Known to millions of fans as Olive Thomas. Olive was remembered as one of the most beautiful of the Ziegfeld girls and had become the darling of New York magazines like Vogue and Vanity Fair, while only 16 during that time. She eventually became the toast of the city, and thanks to the assistance of Condé Nast, she appeared frequently in numerous fashion magazines. She also posed nude for the famous calendar artist Alberto Vargas, and illustrator Harrison Fisher called her the most beautiful woman in the world. It came as no surprise to anyone when she decided to depart for Hollywood. She caught on in the movie colony right away and was cast as a young girl in light comedies like Betty Takes a Hand, Prudence on Broadway, The Follies Girl. In 1919, Maureen Selznick began his own movie company and signed Olive to a lucrative contract. In 1920, she was a huge hit in the movie The Flapper. In that same year, she married Jack Pickford. Another screen idol and brother of Mary Pickford, her place among the royals of Hollywood was not assured. The fact that Olive had committed suicide just months later made headlines around the world and became the subject of much controversy. She was only 20 when she died, plus she had wealth, beauty, fame, and the adoration of not only millions of fans, but that of her young husband as well. Newspapers and magazines have referred to them as the perfect couple, so what went wrong? The Zelnick studio was deluged with letters from around the world, and both the American embassy and the French police promised full investigations. Fortunately, what the investigations revealed did not go along well at all with the public image of Olive Thomas. Jack Pickford was supposed to join Olive in Paris as soon as he completed work on his film The Little Shepherd of Kingdom Come. To make up for the honeymoon, their busy schedules had prevented right after their wedding. Olive had gone on ahead to do some shopping, but as the investigators learned, it was not in the salons where her shopping was being done. Rumors and sources soon reported that Olive had been spotted in a number of clubs while in the company of some of the more notorious figures in the French underground. The story began to circulate that Olive was desperately trying to purchase a large quantity of heroin for her husband Jack, who was a hopeless addict. When she failed, it was said that she committed suicide. Anyways, moving on. Both her home, Pickfair, which once again is now the home of Will Smith, as well as the studios, which aren't technically really there anymore. They're now just a part of Universal Studios. But she has been seen at all three of those. One second, folks. God damn it. Is that better? Anyways, Now Olive was no longer known as the ideal American girl, but as Olive Thomas Dope Fiend, which is ridiculous. In the 1920s, the film lured young would-be stars from across the land, and many warned these hopefuls against the dark allure of drugs and fast living. Olive's death provided good newspaper copy for a year after her death, until finally her suicide was crowded out of the headlines by the death of another Hollywood hopeful. This new girl was just a minor actress, but she was linked to a man who is known as America's Funny Man, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. She would also go on to become one of Hollywood's first lingering ghosts. This will not be the last time that Hollywood Memorial Park Cemetery will be mentioned tonight. So, just pointing that out. That place is crazy haunted, actually. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was an overweight plumber in 1913 when he was discovered by Max Sennett. He had come to unclog the film producer's drain, but Sennett had other plans for him. He took one look at his hefty frame and offered him a job. Arbuckle's large appearance but bouncing agility made him the perfect target for Sennett's brand of film comedy, which included mayhem, pratfalls, and pies in the face. You know, much like the early Chaplin stuff. He was seen making dozens of two-reelers as a film buffoon, and audiences around the world loved him. He made one film after another, all of them wildly successful, and also made a rather substantial fortune, going from a $3 a day job in 1913 to over $5,000 a day by 1917, when he signed with Paramount Pictures. His first brush with scandal came in March of 1916 at Michon Manor in Boston. The incident occurred at Brownie Kennedy's Roadhouse, where the lavish entertainment in Fatty's honor included 12 party girls, who were paid just over $1,000 for their contribution to the evening's fun. Unfortunately for Fatty, things came to an end just before the party could get started. Someone spotted the girls and Fatty stripping on the table in the back room of the Roadhouse and called the cops. Also in attendance that evening were movie magnates Adolf Zucker, Jesse Lasky, and Joseph Schenck. They paid $100,000 in hush money to Boston's district attorney and Mayor James Curley to keep the incident quiet. But it would be another of Fatty's frolics to get him into trouble and earn him his place in Hollywood infamy. Virginia Rapp came to Hollywood around 1919. She was a lovely brunette model who caught the eye of Max Sennett, and he offered her a job with his company. She soon went to work on the studio lot, taking minor parts and apparently sleeping around. This fact became so well known that rumor had it Virginia passed along a rather sensitive infestation to so many of Sennett's crew that he closed down the studio and had the place fumigated. Soon, however, she earned a part in the film Fantasy and later met Fatty Arbuckle and appeared with him in Jelly Loses a Sweetheart. Soon, Virginia was noticed by William Fox shortly after winning an award for Best Dressed Girl in Pictures, and he took her under contract. There was talk of her starring in a new Fox feature called Twilight Baby, and Virginia certainly seemed to be on her way. Fatty had taken a shine to Virginia soon after meeting her and insisted that his friend Bambina Maud Delmont bring her along to a party celebrating his new $3 million contract with Paramount. Fatty decided to hold the bash in San Francisco, which would give him a chance to try out his new custom-made Pierce Arrow on the drive up the coast. That's a car, by the way. Pierce Arrow, They're actually really nice fucking cars, and they went out of business. They were, you know, much like Tucker's, they were put under by Ford and Chevy. So, there you go. On Labor Day weekend, 2 carloads of partygoers headed up the Coast Highway and included Fatty and his friends Lowell Sherman and Freddie Fishback, who were riding in the flashy Pierce Arrow. Bambina, Maud Delmont, Virginia Ramp, and other assorted starlets were piled in the other vehicle. They arrived in San Francisco late on Saturday night, checking into the luxurious Hotel St. Francis. Fatty took 3 adjoining suites on the 12th floor. Shortly after arriving, Fatty made a call to his bootleg connection, and the party was on. Lasting all weekend, on Labor Day afternoon, which was Monday, September 5th, 1921, the party was still going strong. The crowd had grown to about 50 people thanks to Fatty's open house policy. Virginia and the other girls were downing gin-laced orange blossoms. Some of the guests had shed their tops to do the shimmy. Guests were vanishing into the back bedrooms for sweaty love sessions, and the empty bottles of booze were piling up. Around 3 in the morning, Fatty, who was wearing only pajamas and a bathrobe, grabbed Virginia and steered the intoxicated actress to the bedroom suite of 1221. Bambina Maud Delmont later testified that the festivities came to a halt when screams were heard in the bedroom. She also said that weird moans were heard from behind the door. A short time later, Fatty emerged with ripped pajamas, and he told the girls to go in and get her dressed. She makes too much noise. When Virginia continued to scream, he yelled for her to shut up, or I'll throw you out the window, he said. Bambina and another showgirl, Alice Blake, found Virginia nearly nude and lying on the unmade bed. She was moaning and told them that she was dying. Bambina later reported that they tried to dress her but found that all of her clothing, including her stockings and undergarments, were so ripped and torn that one could hardly recognize what garments they were. A short time later, Virginia slipped into a coma at the Pine Street Hospital, and on September 10th she died. The cause of her death was almost undiscovered. The San Francisco deputy coroner, Michael Brown, became suspicious after what he called a fishy phone call from the hospital asking about a post-mortem. He went over personally to see what was going on and walked right into a hasty cover-up. He was just in time to see an orderly emerge from an elevator and head for the hospital's incinerator with a glass jar containing Virginia's female organs. He seized the organs of his own examination and discovered that Virginia's bladder had been ruptured, caused her to die from peritonitis. Brown reported the matter to his boss, and both agreed that police investigation was called for. Soon the newspaper story spun out of control. It was no longer just sex. They told a nation of stunned fans of the happy fat man about strange or natural sex. According to reports, Arbuckle became enraged over the fact that his drunkenness had led to impotence, so he ravaged Virginia with a Coca-Cola bottle. That's pretty sick. Needless to say, a lot of guessing was being done, and a lot of insinuations were being made about Fatty Arbuckle and Virginia's tragic death. And Fatty was beginning to feel the heat. In Hartford, Connecticut, a group of angry women ripped down a screen in a theater showing an Arbuckle comedy, while in Wyoming, a group of men opened fire in a movie house where another Arbuckle short was being shown. A lynch Fatty mood was beginning to sweep the land, and angry and increasing boisterous voices were calling for Hollywood to clean up its act. Finally, Arbuckle's films were pulled from general release. Held without bail, Fatty sweated it out in San Francisco jail while his lawyers sought to have the charges reduced from murder to manslaughter. Film tycoon Adolf Zucker, who had millions at stake with Arbuckle, contacted San Francisco District Attorney Matt Brady in an effort to make the case go away. Brady was enraged and later claimed that Zucker offered him a bribe. Other friends of Fatty called the DA's office and suggested that Arbuckle was being punished because some starlet drank too much and died. They assumed they were helping Fatty's case, but the result was just the opposite. DA Brady grew angrier with each call on Fatty's behalf. By the time the case went to trial, he was livid. The trial began in November of 1921, with Arbuckle taking the stand to deny any wrongdoing. Although his attitude toward Virginia was one of indifference, he never bothered to express any remorse or sorrow for her death. His lawyers were even more to the point, making every effort to paint Virginia as loose, suggesting that she slept around in New York, South America, Paris, and of course in Hollywood. After much conflicting testimony, the jury favored acquitting Fatty by 10-2. After 43 hours of deliberating, the judge declared a mistrial. Second trial was held, and this time the jury was hung at 10-2 for conviction. Fatty was now out on bail and was forced to sell his LA home and fleet of luxury cars to pay his lawyer's fees. Despite the hard work of Brady, who wanted to convict Arbuckle very badly, Fatty was finally acquitted in the third trial, which ended on April 22, 1922. Thanks to confusing testimony by 40 drunken witnesses and no physical evidence, Fatty was finally a free man. In fact, the jury issued this statement: "Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel grave injustice has been done him, and there is not the slightest proof to connect him in any way with the commission of any crime." Total bullshit. He did it. Fatty may have been free, but he was hardly forgiven. Paramount soon canceled his $3 million contract, and his unreleased films were scrapped, costing the studio over $1 million. Fatty's career was finished. Arbuckle was banned from acting in Hollywood productions. The studios just couldn't afford to have his name connected to their pictures. Only a few friends, like Buster Keaton, remained by his side. In fact, it was Keaton who suggested Arbuckle change his name to Will Be Good. Will Be Good. Actually, Arbuckle did adopt the name William Goodrich in later years, and he was able to gain employment as a gag man, as a comedy director. But he would never act again in movies, and the public would never allow him to forget his fall from grace either. People shouted, "I'm coming, Virginia!" when they recognized him on the street, and laughter often greeted him in restaurants and shops. In his forced retirement, Fatty also took drinking quite heavily, and finally he died in New York on June 28, 1933. Innocent or guilty, we'll never really know for sure, but in the state of mind called Hollywood, it didn't really matter. Arbuckle had managed to change the image of Hollywood from one linked to dreams to that of one forever linked to scandal. And now we return to Hollywood Memorial Park and the ghost of Virginia Rapp. I would imagine that there is little doubt in the mind of the reader as to why Virginia's spirit may be a restless one. In addition to losing her life during the horrifying incidents of that fateful Labor Day, Virginia lost her reputation as well. The press was nearly as cruel to her as they were to Fatty Arbuckle. Many have asked why that was, but the answer may lie with William Randolph Hearst. It cannot be denied that Hearst newspapers were instrumental in turning the affair into a nationwide scandal.
as it happened shortly before Fatty went to trial. A Hearst affair with a starlet named Marion Davies hit the news, and Marion's film career began to suffer. Rumor had it that Hearst gave the go-ahead to his papers to exploit every Hollywood scandal of the time, including Fatty's, to take the focus off himself and Davies. Thanks to Hearst, Virginia Rapp was, and I'm quoting here, raped all over again in newspapers across the country. So it's not surprising that her ghost still lingers behind. Visitors who come to Hollywood Memorial Park have reported hearing a ghostly voice which weeps and cries out near Virginia's simple grave. It is believed by many to be her ghost, still attached to this world and still in anguish over her promising career, which was cut short just like her life. This one blows me away, this next story, because I don't care who you are. I don't care if you like this type of thing or not. In one way or another, somehow, this guy touched your life. It doesn't matter, because everybody has heard this name. This next article is called The House in Laurel Canyon, the spirited life and death of Houdini and his castle in the Hollywood Hills. On a dark night around 1918, a full moon was gazing down upon the Hollywood Hills. On a rugged hillside stood a Gothic castle-like mansion that had been built several years before by the wealthy owner of the city's largest furniture stores. In the boom time of Hollywood, he had made hundreds of thousands of dollars with his expensive furnishings, which were in high demand by the actors and directors who had flocked to California. He invested a large sum of his earnings into the construction of the Laurel Canyon home, and on this night, thousands more were lavished on the costume guests who attended a party at the mansion. The party was a costume affair given for both Halloween and for the 40th birthday of the host's son. While music and reveling filled the air, the son stole away from the party and met with his lover one of the balconies overlooking Laurel Canyon Trail at the back of the house. The moonlight set a romantic mood, and the two men gazed warmly, yes, I know, into each other's eyes. It was an era when gay men dared not reveal themselves, especially those who were the heirs to furniture empire. But the romantic mood did not last, and for some reason an argument ensued. The orchestra had just taken an intermission when a scream filled the air. The heir to the furniture fortune had pushed his young lover off the balcony, and his body now lay in a pool of blood more than 30 feet below. There is no question as to who had killed the man, but his father nevertheless hired the best lawyer that money could buy. In an effort to save his son, he spent nearly every dime that he had paying off policemen, prosecutors, and even the trial judge himself. Finally, it was ruled that there was insufficient evidence to prosecute the furniture heir, and the man and the family name were saved. But fortunately, the furniture business and the spectacular mansion were sacrificed to save the son's life, and the business and property were sold. When the family vacated the house, Hollywood rumor reports that they were near penniless. This was the first tragedy to occur that could be connected to the Gothic mansion, but would not be the last. In fact, it has been said that the place is cursed, and that all of those who occupied the house were plagued by bad luck and disaster. In addition to the murder, other strange events have taken place here over the years, and many of those have involved the man who purchased the house from the furniture store owner. His name was Harry Houdini, and he lived in the mansion during his short career with the fledgling movie industry in the 1920s. While he lived in the house, he became a frequent host of seances, strange experiments, and more. And some say this cursed castle may have finally cost the famous magician his life. Houdini was born in Budapest, Hungary on March 24, 1874, but grew up as Eric Weiss in a small Wisconsin town of Appleton. Later, his father, Rabbi Meyer Samuel Weiss, moved the family to Milwaukee, and he took over a Jewish congregation there. At about this same time, Eric became interested in magic and stage performing. Legend has it that he was apprenticed to a locksmith, where he learned to assemble and take apart locks with his eyes closed. It was a skill that would serve him well later in life. He became determined to become a professional magician and later began appearing in New York beer halls and theaters. Taking the name of Houdini, which is based on the name of Robert Houdin, a famous French magician, he played traveling shows in theaters for several years, meeting his wife Bess while performing at Coney Island. He employed a variety of new and strange stunts in his act and devised incredible escapes that had never been attempted before. He became known for some time as the Handcuff King due to the ease from which he had escaped any restraints. Soon his escapes became more daring, and he allowed police officers and various officials in the cities where he played to design their own challenges for him as a publicity stunt. Houdini never failed. It was not long before the enigmatic showman became an American and worldwide sensation. Performing to sold-out crowds, he became an expert in the field of magic, and even today, magicians and scholars have no idea as to the extent of his secrets of magic, or how many of his stunts were performed. Houdini's many journals and notes remained in the possession of his brother after his death. When his brother died, they were destroyed. The public acclaim for Houdini sometimes troubled him, according to stories and anecdotes. Even Houdini himself expressed an awe at the ease with which he escaped from his daring and dangerous traps. One evening during a dinner party around 1924, a Captain Bartlett asked Houdini about one of his escapes. Houdini's expression was said to have changed instantly. "I cannot tell you," he reportedly cried in a wavering tone, "for I do not know myself. I always dread what might result should I fail." Was this Houdini merely being theatrical, or as some have claimed, were there frightening doubts in the back of the magician's mind? But Houdini was troubled as he was famous. He was obsessed with the death of his mother, having been almost unnaturally close to her during her lifetime. After she died, he was observed many times at the cemetery where she was buried, lying face down on her grave and holding long conversations with her. He felt that he had to communicate with her, and that was when he turned to spiritualism. Spiritualism, a movement based on purported communication with the spirits of the dead, began in New York in 1848, and enjoyed a great revival after World War I. The spiritualists believed that the dead could communicate with the living through seances, which were held in darkened rooms and where all manner of ghostly phenomena was said to manifest. Houdini turned to the popular spiritualist movement in hopes that he might be able to communicate with the spirit of his dead mother. But his hopes were quickly dashed. In a short time, Houdini's visits to spiritualists revealed a number of fake mediums who were using forced stage magic and trying to pass the tricks off as the work of the spirits. He claimed that he could duplicate the tricks on stage, and it was not long before his efforts to reach his mother became secondary to his need to expose the fraudulent mediums. He quickly became very bitter and willing to believe that all the mediums were fake. He began investigating their methods and claims and became a self-appointed crusader against them. In 1920, during a tour of England, Houdini met Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes and a spokesperson for spiritualism. The two of them became good friends despite their opposing views on the supernatural. Houdini was delighted to learn that there was at least one intelligent person who believed in spiritualism, found that man in his friend, Conan Doyle. The author was convinced of the value of the movement to the world and had given up most of his lucrative writing career to lecture about spiritualism around the world. He also found that Houdini's knowledge of the spirit world was as vast as his own, although their attitudes differed. Still, even though he was jaded with the results that he had obtained with mediums in the past, Houdini continued to attend seances and hosted many of his own in his new home in Hollywood. Not long after establishing a friendship with Conan Doyle, Houdini became involved with the new film industry in California. He believed he would earn a fortune in this neat aspect of his career and invested over $100,000 in the business. The venture was launched by one of his friends, Arnold De Beer, and Houdini starred in a number of the company's own productions. He appeared in the films as an escape artist with a flair for the supernatural. The films included The Man from Beyond, Terror Island, The Master of Mystery, and several short serials. Unlike his stage career, the movies never showed profit, and one of them, Haldane of the Secret Service, was a total disaster. After losing most of his investment, Houdini and his friend De Beer got into a violent argument at the Laurel Canyon mansion. They never again spoke of or to each other. As far as Houdini was concerned, De Beer was dead to him. Houdini's Hollywood investment had him spending a lot of time in Southern California, and he soon purchased a house here. He bought a looming castle from the estate of a local furniture magnate and soon moved in. The house certainly fitted his theatrical personality with its parapets, battlements, and spooky towers. The foundation of the mansion was honeycombed with tunnels, secret passages, and chambers. One tunnel even ran beneath what is now Laurel Canyon Road. In one of the castle's lower chambers was a deep pool in which Houdini's practices underwater escapes. For years it was even rumored that in these subterranean passages was a hidden chest containing Houdini's greatest secrets. And if it's there, it has never been found. I think it is there, personally. I think that all those tunnels that were originally part of that home, I think they're still there. I think they've probably been blocked off or what have you from construction over the years, but I think the tunnels actually do exist. Anyways, in one of the castle's lowest chambers was, seances were conducted regularly in Houdini's home, mostly in an attempt to communicate with his mother, and also to expose the frauds he continued to prey on the public. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was an occasional guest at these events, but their friendship was soon to end amid accusations of mistrust and deceit. The two men met up again in Atlantic City in 1922, and here Lady Jean Doyle, who is said to be a medium, went into a trance and produced an emotional letter to Houdini from his mother. Losing her gift of automatic writing, Houdini was originally said to have been amazed by the message, but later dismissed it as false, stating they believed Sir Arthur and Lady Jean to be good people, although they had been misled by their contact with the spiritualist movement. He did not believe that they had deliberately tried to deceive him, but he thought they were deceiving themselves with their own gullibility. Which, I of course wholly disagree. I have my own theories about what actually killed Houdini, by the way, which I'll get into in a minute. The rift between the two men, which began with this event, deepened shortly afterward when Conan Doyle and other spiritualists began stating that Houdini's exposure of mediums was simply to cover the fact that he was a medium himself. They claim that many of his extraordinary escapes were actually done by Houdini's dematerializing from the traps that he had placed himself in. This ability, Dahl stated publicly, to unbolt locked doors and undoubtedly due to Houdini's mediumistic powers, not to any normal operations of the lock. The effort necessary to shoot a bolt from within a lock is drawn from Houdini, the medium, but it must not be thought that this is the only means by which he can escape from his prison, for at times his body can be dematerialized and withdrawn. Now Houdini was placed in the classic magician's catch position, meaning he could only go so far in denying the spiritualist claims. By going any further than he would have to expose his escapes or how his escapes were accomplished, which he could never do. His reply was simply that all of his escapes were managed by purely physical means. He stated that his crusade against spiritualism was simply a way to protect the general public from charlatans, but he, however, was able to keep an open mind on the subject and did not assume that all mediums were frauds. Which I do believe. I do believe that he believed that all mediums were not, in fact, frauds. I think he just simply was going after the con artists. You know, and there were a lot of them sprouting up at that time because there was a lot of money in spiritualism because almost every member of the spiritualist movement were wealthy, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He still could not escape the claims being made by Doyle, so he devised a plan to make the author realize that all of his tricks were just that, tricks. He assured Doyle that he would give him proof that magic was accomplished by mere trickery, but whether Houdini really accomplished this with the eerie illusion that he planned is a matter of opinion. 3 persons were present at the test: Houdini, Doyle, and Bernard Ernst, the current president of the American Society of Magicians. A slate was hung in the center of the room by Doyle, and he was given 5 plain cork balls to examine. He chose one of the balls at random and placed it in a container of white paint. Doyle was then given a piece of paper and was told to walk anywhere he wanted to and then write a message on the paper. Doyle left the house, walked 3 blocks away, and then turned a corner. He shielded the paper with his hand and wrote down a short message. Meanwhile, Ernst stayed in the room with Houdini to ensure that the other magician remained in the room. When he finished writing, Conan Doyle folded the paper carefully and placed it in his pocket. He then returned to the house. Houdini then told Doyle to pick up the paint-soaked ball and stick it on the suspended slate. The ball then inexplicably began to roll over the surface of the slate, and it spelled out the biblical phrase, Mene Tekel Upharsin, the exact words that Doyle had written on the paper. Houdini claimed that it was all done by simple trickery, but Doyle was more convinced than ever of his former friend's supernatural powers. Ernst begged Houdini to explain how the trick worked, either to himself or Doyle, in the strictest confidence, but Houdini refused. Strangely, he would never use the trick in any of his shows, and no one has ever been able to reproduce it. At that time, Bernard Ernst admitted that the trick reminded him of a certain mind-reading stunt that Houdini had stopped using because it explained to Ernst it was too spooky. Despite the private death pact that Houdini had made with his friends, he continued to debunk the mediums in his stage shows and through articles and books, showing how so-called spirit forms like ectoplasm could easily be created by the clever stage magician. Then in 1923, Houdini joined a panel from Scientific American magazine, which had offered a reward to any medium who could prove their psychic gifts were genuine. The investigative panel had deadlocked over a medium named Mina Crandon. He used the stage name of Marjorie. In 1924, they had stated that they believed Crandon to be genuine and were prepared to give her the $2,500 reward. Houdini was shocked and traveled to Boston to witness the seance for himself. What happened next remains shrouded in mystery, although it is clear that Crandon did not trust Houdini, and the magician himself had stated that he was determined to expose the medium as a fraud. During the sessions, Houdini claimed to have seen Marjorie performing a number of tricks like making noises with her feet and lifting objects which were said to have moved on their own. In spite of this, he did not expose her publicly and asked that more stringent tests be performed. It was rumored that Marjorie had somehow outwitted Houdini, and rumors also flew that perhaps her powers were genuine after all. The following months, Houdini placed the medium in a wooden box with a hole in the top for her head and holes on each side so that her hands could be held during her entire seance. According to reports from the session, Marjorie's spirit control, who was her dead brother Walter, took such a dislike to Houdini that the top of the box was allegedly ripped off by an invisible force. The seance continued the next evening and Marjorie was placed back in the box. Shortly after, she went into a trance and her spirit guide came through. The committee asked that she ring the bell which had been placed in the box with her. Immediately, Walter, the spirit guide, exclaimed that Houdini had done something to the bell so that it would not ring. An examination of the bell revealed that a piece of rubber had been wedged against the clapper so that it would not ring. However, there was no proof that Houdini had tampered with it. A short time later, Walter also said that Houdini had placed a ruler inside of the box so that he could later accuse Marjorie of cheating. The ruler too was found, and later Houdini's assistant would say that he had been instructed to place it there in case Houdini could not find another way to prove she was a fraud. It certainly appeared that Houdini had been caught cheating, and he was widely discredited for it, leading many to doubt the integrity of some of his earlier investigations. In this case, the committee scheduled further tests of Miss Crandon, but they were later canceled. The decision on Marjorie's abilities was split, and because of this, the money was never awarded. Houdini quickly recovered from the scandal and went on to continue his work against the spiritualists until his death on Halloween of 1926. At that time, the curtain fell on the great magician for all time, who did it. On the night of October 11th, a chain slipped during Houdini's famous underwater torture escape and fractured his ankle. The doctor in the audience advised him to end the show and go to the hospital, but he refused. In fact, he finished the entire performance painfully hopping on one foot. Afterwards, he was ordered to stay off his feet for at least 1 week, but he continued his shows anyways. Throughout the evening, Houdini was seen wincing in pain, and late that night he admitting to crippling pains that continued to get worse. His performances over the next 2 days consisted of hours of agony, save for brief intermissions when he fell into a restless sleep. He was examined by doctors upon his arrival in Detroit and was diagnosed to having acute appendicitis. He had a fever of 102 degrees but refused to stay at the hospital. He was scheduled to perform at a sold-out show that night and was determined to be there. By the time he took the stage, his fever had gone up to 104. He was tired, feverish, and tormented by abdominal pains, plus the broken ankle from a few weeks past. He somehow managed to perform the entire show, though, Although his terrified assistants were constantly forced to complete some motion that Houdini couldn't manage. He remained on the stage throughout the evening, but when the curtain closed, he literally collapsed where he had been standing. An operation was performed immediately, but the surgeons agreed that it was hopeless. Houdini managed to hang on until the early mornings of October 31st in the darkness. He turned to Bess and his brother Hardin, he affectionately called Dash, and spoke quietly to them. "I'm tired of fighting, Dash," he murmured, and then turned away. Houdini then stepped through the curtain from this world to the next. This is incorrect. This whole fucking article is incorrect. I can't believe it. That's not how he died. That is so not how he died. He actually, he actually died in that trick. The underwater escape, he failed to escape it. He literally drowned to death. I don't know. I don't understand this. Anyways, moving on. In the years following his death, Bess Houdini was contacted many times by mediums who claimed to have messages from her husband. She believed none of them, because she and Houdini had agreed that should he contact her, he would do so using a code that he had devised for her mind-reading act. Word spread far and wide that Bess had offered $10,000 to any medium who could deliver a true message from Houdini. Almost weekly, a new medium came forward claiming to have broken the code, but none of them did until 1928, when famed medium Arthur Ford announced that he had a message for Bess. He told her that message had come from Houdini's mother, and that the message was a single word, which was forgive. With this, Bess had a startling announcement to make, claiming that Ford's message was the first that she had received which had any appearance of the truth. In November, another message came from Ford, this time from Houdini himself. In a trance, the medium relayed an entire coded message. Roosevelt, answer, tell, pray, answer, look, tell, answer, answer, tell. After this information was relayed to Bess, she invited Ford to her home, and he asked her if the words were correct. She said they were, and Ford asked her to remove her wedding ring and tell everyone present what Roosevelt meant. This was the word which made the message authentic, a secret known only to Bess and Harry themselves. It was the title of a song which had been popular at Coney Island when they first met. The first of the message was a series of code words that spelled out the word believe. The final clue that Houdini had promised to relay from the next world, but did Houdini actually communicate from the other side? Not surprisingly, there were soon accusations of fraud leveled against Arthur Ford, even though Beth claimed the message was correct. Many claimed that Ford had gotten the code from a book about Houdini published in 1927. The press, the skeptics, and Houdini's friends refused to accept that Ford had broken the code, and Bess, on their advice, withdrew her reward offer. But he broke the... See, this is why I don't like closed-minded fucking people. They refuse to believe the truth even when it's right in front of your fucking face. He broke the code. There's no doubt in my mind that he broke the damn code. Anyways, on a dry day in 1959, a brush fire swept through Laurel Canyon and destroyed a number of houses in Hollywood Hills. Houdini Mansion was one of them. What remained of the place is only the walls of the old building, the chauffeur's quarters, and a portion of the garage. Today, nothing but ruins remain. Silent stone staircases still led to grassy ledges on what is now private property. It stands abandoned, but perhaps not empty. See, some say that the ghost of Houdini does not rest in peace, and that he still walks where his beloved castle once stood. Those who have come to the remains of the house, as many do on Halloween nights, claim to have seen a dark figure standing on the staircases or walking in the garden grotto. Many believe that the shape is that of Houdini himself. The magician always said that if it would be possible for him to come back, he would do so, and perhaps he has. Perhaps, too, he's unsure as to just how to get back. I don't see anybody in chat. I don't even know if anybody's listening right now. I just, you know, technically, I guess I'm having mic issues. Like last week, it was like, it sounds like there's wind blowing into my microphone. This week, I have my headphones in to try and correct that problem, and well, there's double echo. You know, it's like I can't frickin' win. Anyway, since evidently nobody's watching my show right now, I'm going to probably call it a night. So, for those of you that did tune in, thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you on Wednesday night. Wednesday night show should be good. It's going to be kind of a continuation of tonight. I'm going to be talking a lot about some of my favorite Hollywood figures that are haunting places today, like George Reeves, the original Superman, for example. So definitely tune into that. And until next time, my pack, peace out.